listeners, and welcome to the Arts Management and Technology Lab podcast. My name is Alyssa, and I am the podcast producer. In this episode, contributor Lauren Cornwell interviewed Betty Siegel, Director of VSA and Accessibility at the Kennedy Center, to discuss technology, accessibility, and inclusion. This episode is divided into two parts. We hope you enjoy the first half of the interview.
So, welcome to the Arts Management and Technology podcast. I'm Lauren Cornwell, and today joining me, I have Betty Spiegel, the Director of VSA and Accessibility at the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. So today we'll be talking a bit about the intersection of technology, accessibility, and inclusion. Betty, I know you've had a very extensive background working on the creation of equity, access, and inclusion initiatives across arts organizations. So I was wondering if you could maybe start off by telling us what you feel that some of the key components are to creating and sustaining a culture of accessibility and inclusion in today's arts organizations.
Oh, that's such a great question. I have to rephrase that, so you may have to help me a little.
Yeah.
So what are the key elements
What are some of those?
Creating and sustaining sort of a focus on inclusion. Absolutely, one of the most critical components that I believe in is that it is a level of commitment that has to be from the top down and from the bottom up within any institution. Accessibility does not thrive unless there actually really is buy-in from everyone. So I think that's a critical element to inclusive programming. It has to be an adopted and articulated value. And it has to be a sincere and actually executed value. So we tend, I think you know this, with a lot of issues, say, oh, we support equity, access, and inclusion. We want to welcome everyone. And all of those words are beautiful, and my little heart just starts to pound when I hear those. But until I see you actually take those words and put them into action in a real live way, then I tend to be a little bit skeptical about the level of commitment that the institution or the organization has. So I think that's a really critical piece. How's that?
No, excellent. I definitely agree that, sometimes with organizations, words are great, but actions are always the key.
And staff and to resource it. So that's the other piece of it. So your action is in the resource. Am I allowing staff time to go towards this issue? Am I empowering the staff to go towards this issue? Am I positioning someone to be the champion for whatever the topic is? In my case, the champion for accessibility. Because we often have to, I don't want to say speak on behalf of people with disabilities, because that's really not where we try to go. We always want people to speak on behalf of themselves to create that space. But oftentimes decisions are being made in an environment where the person that the decision is going to impact isn't at the table.
Absolutely. Do you have any, advice for up-and-coming arts managers or even seasoned arts managers who are really looking to better that community engagement and really bring the people to the table who should be involved in these decisions? Absolutely.
I don't know whether it's advice, but I really do love the saying from the disability community and movement itself, which is nothing about us without us. And some people have even shortened that saying to say it should just be nothing about us, period. It's not about doing for, it's doing with, and allowing that community to be active, meaningful participants in whatever is happening at the institution. So for arts administrators and managers, number one, be sure that those voices are at the table. Make sure you're looking not just at how we're reaching out to audiences or visitors, but talk about who are we hiring? Who are the artists? What's the content that we're putting on? And are we really representing and positioning members of these various communities that have been disenfranchised for such a long time? And in my case, empowering and allowing the voices of people with disabilities to be a meaningful part of all of the work that we do across the institution. So that's a really huge charge. Like, basically what I'm saying is, please change the world and make everything better for everybody. And do that, arts administrator. Go for it.
Fantastic. So then I guess as we're talking more about, I guess, sort of thinking of solutions and
Right.
like what are things that we can do, moving into what do you think are some technology-based solutions that arts institutions can use to facilitate this type of engagement, specifically with programming?
Right. That's an interesting conversation. So I love technology. I am actually, my colleagues think that I'm technologically not very advanced technologically, and sometimes I'm not, but actually I'm really fascinated when technology has a real life application, where really, if it's solving a real life problem, then I'm super duper interested. If it's really abstract technology, I just can't wrap my brain around it. So when it comes to technology and the inclusion of people with disabilities, we have to really be conscious of the fact that technology can be very inclusive. So just think about your little phone device that you carry around with you everywhere, and think about how just having this little thing and using it in a very not technologically advanced way, using it as a keyboard and a display, I can have a conversation with someone who's deaf that I wouldn't have been able to have quite so easily in the past. Because we can just type on my phone back and forth to each other. We can text each other. How cool is that in real time? So all of a sudden, that communication environment, some of the barriers to communication are gone. And it's super simple. It's super actually low tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really inclusive thing that this phone does. But on the other hand, it's a touch-enabled technology. And to be honest, blind people use these phones too. But it's because the entities who created this smart device got kind of slapped across the, little slap across the head, because they weren't creating it as accessible technology. So how would a blind person use a touch screen? Well, then they had to work in all of the accessibility features for voice-activated voice recognition, a million other things, just making so that you can change the font size is really important, or what color the background is. So they really had to work to add in those accessibility features to make this thing that now drives this thing being the phone that drives our life, available to everyone to use. So I love technology when it's inclusive and enables those communication moments to happen, and I don't like it when it's exclusive and it cuts people out.
Awesome.
So that's a really simple. There's tons of really cool technology that's coming around. There are trends that I certainly see in technology that are being used in museum and theater or other cultural environments that I find really interesting right now. It's like there's been this little boom.
Can you maybe talk a little more about some of those specific technologies?
Sure.
That maybe, even if you don't endorse them necessarily.
I'm not allowed to endorse anything that they are not paying me. This is not a sales pitch at all. But I think what's really interesting is when we see in the world of technology and cultural arts, we are really way behind. Like the technology that we've used for lots and lots of years now is old technology. Assistive listening devices, for example. Those haven't changed, I don't think, in 40 or 50 years. We still have, basically 4 types of assistive listening systems. We have those that are hardwired, sort of like on the plane when you plug your headphone in. That's like a hardwired assistive listening system in a sense. There's the RF system, radio frequency systems that we use. It's like having a little miniature radio station that you set up to broadcast the sound. There's the IR, infrared, basically using infrared light to broadcast sound to a receiver that the person has. And then one of the older technologies also is induction loop technologies, which broadcast sound through a magnetic field. Right? Those are it. Those are the 4 that have been around forever. And the number of manufacturers who are creating this technology is not getting bigger, it's getting smaller. So when I started in this field, I had a list of, 20, 30 different companies, brands, manufacturers that you could buy this technology from. I think it's down to more like a handful of 5, 6 companies producing this technology. I don't actually think that's good for the community. There's not enough competition to drive new innovation in the field of assistive listening device. So we're still working with really old technology to help one of our biggest populations, which are people with hearing loss. So to answer your question about what's new and innovative, is that Wi-Fi. People are playing around. Finally, somebody is playing around with new technology, which is the Wi-Fi enabled assistive listening systems. I don't think they're there yet. Do not run out and buy a Wi-Fi assistive listening system yet. But I find that the experimentation in that is actually really interesting because it could open up a lot of new and exciting moments. There is a technology that's out there right now that we've tested at the Kenney Center, a Wi-Fi based assistive listening system. And what was really cool about it wasn't even necessarily the Wi-Fi part of it, because the truth of the matter, Wi-Fi has too much of a lag to really work well in a theater environment as assistive listening. That's what we learned when we tested it, because the audience was telling us they kept saying they heard an echo. And what was happening was they were hearing because they had mild hearing loss, they were actually hearing the sound live from the actors on stage. They were hearing it ever so much of a little bit less, with a little bit of lag through the speakers that the sound for the whole audience was being shot through. And then they were hearing it a third time through the Wi-Fi because there was just enough of a lag as the sound was captured by the microphone, sent back to a mixer, sent back out, that they kept telling us there was an echo. And indeed there was. But what was cool about the technology that we tested was that they had worked out the technology was developed in such a way that gave people the capacity to customize the sound, to decide whether to amp the highs or amp the lows. And in hearing loss, your hearing loss, everybody doesn't have the same hearing loss. Mm-hmm. You have hearing loss at high and low frequencies, etc. And the current technology just has on, off, and volume control. This new technology had the ability to actually control, to customize the experience to my hearing loss. So I could actually change it so I was getting more high frequencies or more low frequencies. That was the cool thing about this. I'm telling you, if somebody would really grab a hold of that and somehow apply that even to the older technology, what an amazing innovation. So I just went off on a terrible tangent on you. I hope that's what you wanted to hear. I get so excited by this stuff.
No, absolutely. So when we're looking at technology-based inaccessibility that's like currently on the market, I know we've heard a lot about things like GalaPro.
Oh yeah. So I'm not allowed to endorse.
Not allowed to endorse, but could you talk about maybe like some of your thoughts around technology like that, and maybe even some pros and cons?
Right. So it's really interesting. So I'm not a developer of GalaPro, but I have been watching its development, and I've been lucky to have the opportunity to try it out. And I might have a different take on what's innovative about the technology than everybody else. But what GalaPro does, it's an app that you can download on your phone, and you should go ahead and do that, because there's a little test demo go to the New York City and scroll to the very bottom, and there's a demo down there that they've done so you can actually see how it works. And it's captioning. What it's doing is it's captioning the show so that you can sit in a theater and you can see the words going across your screen. It's not synopsized. It's not like super titles for an opera. It's word for word. That's really, really, really cool. I have a million ways to do that. I can, at the Kenney Center, we have live, they're called cart writers, and they can cart live to an iPad, to your phone, to a 4-foot-long LED sign that's on the screen, to a television monitor, to a computer monitor. The actual delivery, the thing on which the captioning is displayed, that's not innovative. Displaying it on your phone, that's not innovative. What's innovative with GalaPro is that they're the first entity that I know of, and my experience is maybe limited, that has figured out a way to automate that. So I, in order to do captioning at the Kennedy Center for a live event, have to have a live person there to actually either live write the show or take a script that's been input into some app and forward the text one line at a time in sync with the actors, right?
Mm-hmm.
GalaPro has automated that so that you enter the script. They have a combination of AI and the app has the ability to listen and then to learn the script, and it will automatically sync it with the actor or whatever's going on stage. That's the exciting part of GalaPro for me, is that they've solved this big problem of can we automate through voice recognition and AI the captioning instead of having to have a live person there. Because what that means for the deaf and hard of hearing person is that you can walk into a show that has the GalaPro system as a part of it, and every single day, every single performance, you can have captioning. And without that automation, that's not, sometimes it's financially not so feasible, and resource-wise, it's not always feasible. So that's what's exciting to me about GalaPro. I really hope that some of the negatives to it get worked out. So the negatives, you have to hold the phone. And I don't know, we have 2-hour shows. Have you ever tried to hold the phone, right, for 2.5 hours and stare at the screen and not end up with it in your lap, which doesn't do the person who's deaf or hard of hearing any good, because they want to see the show. They don't want to be staring at the phone in their lap. So there are still, and because the system has to learn the show, it's not as useful to me. They can't automate they haven't yet gotten to the point where they can automate the one-off.
Okay.
Right? So if I have a show like Color Purple, School of Rock, Wicked, where the show comes in and it's going to sit in my theater for 4 or 5 weeks, right? Then there's time for the system to learn the show, and then it's up and running for the 4 or 5 weeks. The first week, maybe not so much, but after that it is. But what if I've got a comedian who's just there for one night, and there's no opportunity to learn the show for the AI and the voice recognition to learn the show? It just has to be live. So for a theater like the Kennedy Center, where we do thousands of events a year, I'm not sure that GalaPro solves our problem of having it available every night for every show. So that's a con.
Thanks for listening to the Arts Management and Technology Lab podcast series. You can read more on the intersection between the arts and technology at www.amt-lab.org. Or you can listen to more interviews and discussions in our podcast series on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or Stitcher. Thank you for joining us.